and worked with students in national park, marine, and river locations. Now she managed the environmental program, president of the Tribe 3 Generation Community for the Learning in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and lead workshops for the Compass Schools Group as system thinking and developing ESD in the school context. Please welcome her with a big hand.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind welcome, and it's my pleasure to share with you some of my experiences and some of the current thinking on environment for sustainable development, and especially systems thinking. So during our session this morning, I'd like to build on Dr. Shin Dong-Wan's definitions of education for sustainable development, to identify a little bit the role of national parks and protected areas, to consider what a systems of thinking approach means, both for activities with groups, but also for us as managers of our national parks, and to explore strategies and approaches for infusing education for sustainable development into the National Park Forum. So today, we are undoubtedly part of a global world. Just look at us sitting here, and then look at yourself, the clothes that you're wearing, the foods that you had for breakfast this morning, the gadgets that you communicate through. All of us are interconnected in this world. I was drawn to this during the flood time in Bangkok last year, when a friend in England was complaining that she couldn't get a spare part for her computer because of the floods in Thailand. And when I thought about it, I thought of the industrial parks owned by Japanese companies in Thailand that make the glue components that go on the boards for computers. All of us are connected. Our world is changing. The views that we held of the world in the past are not the view of the world of today. And yet we still try to trap the world, and we try to trap our thinking in a box that doesn't quite belong with the global interconnections of today's world. As Peter Senge puts it, the unhealthiness of our world today is in direct proportion to our inability to see it as a whole. Our thinking traditionally is linear, and we are not yet comfortable with thinking of things in a non-linear form. If we continue to think about problems and try to solve problems using the thinking of our parents and our grandparents, the solutions that we come up with will be the solutions that our parents and our grandparents came up with as well. We need to step back and look at the global picture. We need to think how our lifestyle fits into all aspects of everything. No longer can we look at one single element, but we need to consider our part in the bigger picture of this global world. We're consuming the world with incredible speed. All of the time, population, water, resources, everything is increasing, or decreasing, whichever way you look at the graph. The issues are happening, and we are part of them. And so we cannot look just at national parks or other protected areas without considering how these issues play out in that arena. What does unsustainability look like? It's when we're acting, when we're behaving beyond our means. And as it keeps going, the system collapses. Global warming, climate change, deforestation, lack of biodiversity. We know the symptoms of an unsustainable world. We need to understand the system that we are part of in order to look at the checks and the balances, in order to understand how the system is functioning, to do something about the unsustainability of it. So sustainability is the set of systems conditions that can continue indefinitely. And coming from national park backgrounds, so many of us, we're familiar with those conditions for sustainability. That we live within the Earth's limits, that we maintain a vital and prosperous economy, that we support social stability, equity and development, and that we make individual opportunity for fulfillment and for happiness. Only when those four conditions are operating together can we truly say that we have sustainability. Perhaps the most quoted definition of sustainable development is that from the Brundtland Report, that development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. A definition that I find particularly helpful is that sustainable development is the strategic process of continuous change in the direction of sustainability. We can't do it, sit back and say, okay, we're there. It's that continuous review, the continuous reflection, the reaction to what is happening in our global world. It's absolutely essential to change the way we think. All other attempts at change will fail if we do not transform our thinking. Our thinking of the way the world works requires people to think systematically, holistically, integratively, and in futures mode. We've got to look at things differently, but we need tools to help us do this. Just take a moment and look at the box and the web. And then with the people sitting near you, how many differences in 60 seconds can you come up with between that cube and the web? Can you do it now, just with the people near you? How many differences can you find? Okay, your time is up. Not very long. Is it possible for you to shout back at me? Some difference between the cube and the web, perhaps from that table?
The web is flexible.
Right. We've got some movement on it. Imagine throwing something onto it. It's going to move backwards and forwards compared to the rigidity of the cube. Thank you. Your table? Yes?
Simple and very complicated.
Right. The cube, your eye can follow the edges round, whereas the web, you sort of get lost as you look at the patterns in it. Right. The cube is more straightforward. Thank you.
The web is software. It's fun.
Right. Yes, I agree.
But I can imagine insects in this case.
Right. right. But perhaps the web catches and takes in more things, yeah? Okay, perhaps one more observation. We start to see two very different models. And if we think about this as a metaphor for the way that we think, traditionally, our thinking is in one direction. Solutions come together at a point. Our thinking is quite rigid and we block things off into components. Oh, this is the responsibility of national parks. This is the responsibility of schools. Oh, the health service, you can look after that department. But today's global world requires this different thinking. It requires us to think more like the spider's web. It requires us to think flexibly, to look at connections, to seek nodes, to see where other things perhaps get caught up in the issue, rather than try to contain issues in a box. And it's difficult. We've already had referred to that we use different terms and that confuses us. Sustainable education, sustainable development, education for sustainable development. But all of them, we are trying to address these global issues, the ones shown on the side. The tool of ESD can help us with the strategy, the pathway through. What is ESD? The definition that I will use from the UN Decade of Education for Sustainable Development. Education for sustainable development aims to help people to develop attitudes, skills, and knowledge to make informed decisions for the benefit of themselves and others, now and in the future, and to act upon these decisions. That act, that very vital participation held there in the definition of ESD. So how does this come together with the national parks? Well, I believe that there are skills in education for sustainable development that are vital to be translated into working national parks. We'll look at each of them one by one, but they include envisioning, critical thinking and reflection, building partnerships, participation in decision-making, and systems thinking. So first, envisioning. What do we want our national parks to look like? We can't begin to move towards a sustainable national park if we haven't first thought what we imagine a sustainable national park to be. Envisioning involves shareholders in all aspects of the national park. We need to imagine together what the future of the national park needs to be. Once we've created goals together, then we can start to reflect about what is currently happening, and in so doing, create the goals that need to be reached and the issues which need to be addressed as we move to the envisioned future. Tilbury in the UNESCO report quotes, "Imagine a world in which people from all backgrounds and levels of expertise are engaged in a process of learning for improving quality of life for all within their community and beyond for future generations. A world in which people recognize what is of value to sustain and maintain and what needs to change through reflecting, understanding, asking, making choices, and participating in change for a better world." So I think the first very important thing is that envisioning identifies relevance and meaning for groups of different people. We are not just the Parks Department saying this is what a national park should look like. We're consulting and using the needs and the ideals of all the stakeholders that could be involved. So it's a shared vision, and from that will come shared actions and shared movement towards the sustainable national park. Another aspect of ESD that has its role in helping us to infuse ESD to national parks is critical thinking at all aspects, learning to question what we're doing, looking at values and belief systems, recognizing our assumptions, our knowledge, perspective and opinions. Critical thinking helps us to reflect and develop the ability to participate in change. It provides new perspective and promotes alternative ways of thinking. National park stakeholders need to review what is happening in such areas from multiple viewpoints. From the environment point of view, of course, but also from economy, society, culture, personal well-being, since these are the strands that together contribute to a sustainable system. Thinking critically will create a holistic view of all that is happening in and around the national park and give confidence to address the unsustainable practices. We won't just be acting on a gut feeling. We will actually be looking at how it's rooted into all aspects, the economy, society, personal well-being, as well as the environment. We need to build partnerships. We need to see how our national park fits into the wider system of our community. We need to promote dialogue and negotiation and work together for a common purpose. Partnerships will build shared visions among a diverse range of stakeholders, as well as motivating and adding value to a range of initiatives. Partnerships and networking may include parties involved in education, in health, in conservation, the tourist sector, the government sector. All aspects could and should be involved with our national parks. Another element of ESD is this shared participation in decision making, one that empowers oneself and others, putting the decision-making responsibility for the outcomes in the hands of the participants, creating an ownership, creating a common sense, so that together people can work for enjoying, for sharing, for developing the national park. Education for sustainable development is also characterized by this multi-interdisciplinary, values-driven type of learning. It's where learners and teachers sometimes switch roles. So the ranger in the national park is learning from his students as well as being a point of information for them. It's important that our ESD is locally relevant. One pattern doesn't fit all. We have to look and see what's happening in our area. We need to draw on the local wisdom of our immediate area and on what happens there. It enables us to stop looking at fragments of situation and to look at the connections of things. Individuals must examine what value they give to any issue and understand why they hold this value. Discussion and reflection are so important at the planning level, but also as we bring young people into national parks. And then, of course, the main theme of this morning, looking at systems thinking, looking for links and synergies when trying to find solutions to problems. Systems thinking is a framework for seeing the interrelationships rather than just things, for seeing patterns rather than static snapshots. We want to see how our national park fits into the wider community, how it fits into the economy of the country, how it fits into the well-being of people, how it fits into the education system. Systems thinking is a unique perspective on reality, a perspective that sharpens our awareness of the whole and how the parts within those wholes interrelate. No longer will we just be looking at the tree in the forest. Now we will be looking at the value that tree brings. We'll be looking at its aesthetic beauty, its economic value, its habitat niche. All of those things, that tree is more than just a tree. And systems thinking brings with it its set of skills, and these are things that perhaps we need to consider and think more about. Systems thinking allows us to consider the big picture. It puts things into context. It enables us to understand change over time. It enables us to be aware of the impact of change. What happens when we make one change in the system? Whether it's to increase the fee to enter the national park, or whether it's to allow music groups to play in the national park, or whether it's to plant different species to try to bring back a section of biodiversity that is endangered. What are the impacts of those actions on the whole picture? It considers relationships. It demands creative thinking to develop innovation. And it helps us to understand leverage points, those points where we can put change into a system. And to show that, I'd like us to move around just a little bit. Could I ask as many people as who would like to come and stand together on the green stage at the front, please? Don't be shy. You don't have to speak. It will be a model to show us a little bit about how systems work. Thank you. A few more people, please. A few more, be brave. They promised me that this was the doing session. That people came to Conservation Campus not just to sit, but to do. Thank you.